All right. Hi, everyone. Finally back with an actual RPG campaign video. So, in this series, the Deathly Chronicles, I'll be using playtesting my own system, my own one-page RPG. I'm going to put a little more effort into this one. And since my finished uh, product has been shared with you guys in my last video, I've added a interesting mechanic to help with the narrative, with the concept of roleplay, and that is a reputational system. So on the character sheet at the bottom here, I moved the concept area onto the parchment. So we have things like race, gender, age, goal, and origin, all with enough space on the sidebar here. So the bottom is now the reputational system. You can use a paperclip, you can draw it in, but basically you start at zero. Depending on what you do as a character, mainly after monumental moments or quests or accomplishments judged by the guide is the game master of my game, you would go up or down depending on if it was a selfless act or if it was for your own good, for your own ego. So honor +2 is the most you can get. Self -2 is lowest you can get. They don't really distinguish good or bad. It's just depending on what you've done is for your own good or for the good of others. Again, could either be evil or good, but it's more so how the impact affects others compared to yourself. So this modifier strictly most likely only affects heart because heart is used for charisma and anything to do with interacting with NPCs in the world. So with that added, it's also in the new character sheet. To make room, I simply reduced the logo size and wrapped the text for the About section, and the reputation's right here in the middle. That's it. When you start off the game, you simply keep that in mind that you are typically starting right in the middle, unless the guide says that your character might start -1 or +1, depending on, again, the story. So, in this episode, we're going to introduce our character. We're going to create our character in this session, episode 0, essentially. And uh, after which we will also do some slight world building. Behind me is Planet Exeter, which I've used before in my previous videos. Exeter's been my kind of placeholder generic planet, but this will be the planet, the world for this new campaign, the Deathly Chronicles. Now, as far as the world building goes, it will be a sandbox. There won't be any big starting hook. It will just focus on our character, and we'll see what happens based on dice rolls and the Oracle. So let's begin with a name. I've already chosen one. Our first character will be REECE. So we'll write that in here. And REECE, of course, will start at level 1. Now, for the 5 abilities, Havoc, first Heart, like I said, that's focused on willpower, charisma, and resolve. I got a 10 exactly. So I'm going to write down 10 in Heart. Next is Agility for Havoc. I got 11. Wow. Okay. So 654. So we got 11, 15 total. That's a heck of a score for agility. I'm thinking my character is going to be quite fast on his feet. Dexterity, reflexes, and speed. That's what agility represents. Next is Vigor, which is physical strength, stamina, and durability. Kind of overcompassing. Oh, okay. 411, so 6. So he's not exactly the strongest character in the neighborhood. That gives me an idea of what to expect for him. Next is optics. So remember, you can swap 2 scores in my game. I might not be happy with 6 at Vigor. We'll see what happens with optics and craft. Optics is perception, insight, and awareness. Okay, so another decent score, 11, so 652. So we have a 13 total. That will go to optics. If he will be a rogue-like character, I'm thinking I'll keep that in optics. Craft, is also important because that's intellect, originality, and magical aptitude. In this world, spells will be based on similar to Karen, which is just a spell book you hold in, or a scroll, I should say. You hold the scroll, you can say the magic words, it will conjure the spell depending on your roll with craft, and if you succeed, the spell is effective. If you fail, the spell catches fire. And for craft, I got 13, so 661. Okay, 13 again. Now, what are my thoughts on these scores? Because I have a concept already for my character Reese, the first character, that is foreshadowing, by the way, um, he works in a tavern, a restaurant of sorts. He's a not a busboy, but a server. So he does have to have some level of charisma, heart, and so I'm going to keep heart at 10. Agility, now maybe at night he likes to run or exercise. Uh, maybe he's very active. Maybe he does side gigs. He probably does go hunting occasionally. Maybe agility does explain a side hustle that he does. So again, we can build on that. For Vigor, for 6, which is low, I want to keep it there because for optics and craft, if he is going to be a magic user or someone who prefers to use magic and someone who likes to remain stealthy in the shadows, if when the time calls for him to take up arms, that most likely will be our character. Remember, when you level up, you can advance an ability, so I can always, if once I level up, I can increase his vigor the next couple times, while my other scores are pretty decent. My highest score being 15 for agility. So that's what you do for Havoc. Next is health. So when you roll health, you have to roll 3d6 and choose the highest roll. Choose the highest die. Okay, and that will be 3. 3, 2, 1, literally counting down. Okay, well, I could give him a bump because it's solo. He's the only character so far. So here's the idea. As we start this campaign, he will meet future characters, NPCs who will eventually, as I'm thinking, become actual playable characters. Because it will be him at the start, I will give him a boost. So I'll give him 6, which is the most you can do anyways for this kind of role. So I'll give him 6, 3 basically times 2. If it was 2, we give him 4, just to be fair but not too courteous. Next is going to be move. So move is half your agility. This is how many spaces you can move in a combat round. And luckily, his agility is 15, so half of that is 7.5. You round up to 8. Half of 7, 14 is 7. So yep, so 8. That's a lot of spaces, but it makes sense. His character's beginning to unfold. Looks like he's going to be a assassin, rogue type of character. Not necessarily a thief, but definitely a rogue. Okay, next is the rucksack. So this is your travel pack. This is your backpack. You can carry up to 10 items. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed armor, but armor is after you choose the armor that you're given, I should say. So as you progress, you'll be able to acquire more items. That's obvious. But starting, he has a 1d6 item. So it's up to us. It's up to the setting. This game, I try to make it where it is genre neutral, a system neutral, but it does obviously kind of lean fantasy when you read it. And it does say fantasy in the about, but I do want it to, for my own sake, I do want it to have it be adaptable to other genres. So he gets a 1d6 weapon. I'm going to say that's going to be a dagger. So dagger, 1d6, and then his armor is a worn armor. He works for a tavern. Maybe he owns a rusty piece of armor, so I will say rusty chest plate, rusty armor. So rusty armor, it's only a +1. He doesn't get any other armor than that. 50 feet of rope. This is stuff he has on person. because he works in the tavern, we'll see where he lives, what his living accommodations are. Then a dry rations, so bread, etc. Looks like he only has one of those. And a busted or broken lantern, I mean the glass is broken so you can't close it. Depending on the weather, which if I remember to check, will affect the candle itself, the lantern's performance. And the parchment in your character is your parchment item is the actual parchment here that you're holding. So we also use for the character concept. Now, race is human. We'll write down our character concept, which you would have to do in your first, which we didn't do, I skipped. Gender is male. His age is, let's say he's 24. Okay, so now that we are this far, we're not done yet. We write down his armor plus one, so he has one armor. This is his picture. That's our character. That's Reese. He's, again, just a younger 20-something-year-old. Um, works in a tavern. That's all we know so far. So let's, oh yeah, we gotta roll up how much currency he has, which is in that section. So 3d6, that's it. Not multiplied, not added together. Or they are added together. He has 5, 4, 1, so 10. That's how much gold pieces he has on person. So 10 gold pieces. Okay, now we're diving into his origin. So let's use our trusty oracle cards, or I should say tarot cards. And this first one, this is the zombie deck. So the bullet card. This one for strength, which he doesn't have. But I'm thinking that he's strong in another department, and that is his craft. So this says strength, but it can mean stronger in other things. Because his agility is 15, I'm going to say he does come from a family of hunters. That explains the speed. And that to me, that's how it makes sense. So weapon meaning arrows fired, stuff like that. So let's say his origin is a family of hunters. And his goal in life, let's go to the card. This will describe his goal. This will emphasize his goal. Again, it's mostly around death, which this whole campaign is kind of themed around. Looks like this it's this groom getting married to a woman who's yeah. So that's the card. Cups, three of cups. That's looks like minor arcana. He wants to find, well, I don't want to say he wants to find true love. I mean, that's very, very, very vague, very simple, generic, but he wants to find something. It could be a woman. Maybe he doesn't want to find a true love, but he wants to find, she's not, okay, I have an idea. He used to have a true love. He used to have a wife. Maybe he, no, maybe he had a girlfriend. Maybe he had a childhood friend who he knew for a long time and they eventually fell in love when they grew up. Maybe she was killed, kidnapped. This could be because of that card. This could be the turning point on the first during the first kind of spoils things, but on the first we are the GM or the guide essentially, so we are kind of trying to morph Reese's destiny at the start here. We always morph Reese's destiny at the start. Maybe she is present, but something happens to her. We don't know what happens to her, but something happens to her. It could be death, could be kidnapped. She can get kidnapped, she can get ill, she would disappear. We don't like that's all the possibilities. So we're still thinking of his goal, but maybe his goal is to start a family. That's like the most, typical for anybody. Just start a family, essentially. for any like young 20-year-old male in like in this picture. So let's say that's his goal. Just wants to start a family, and maybe he was close to it. This was literally within a week of his wedding, and something happens. This is really unfolding here. So I have my notepad here for our not solitary chronicles, deathly chronicles, and because Reese starts off as like in the picture, he's very happy-go-lucky. He's young. He has the whole world around him. He has a whole life ahead of him. And this game is literally called Deathly, or this campaign, I should say, is literally called Deathly Chronicles around my game. Something bad has to happen. Now, she doesn't have to die off the bat, but for Reese, this makes sense now. He wants to start a family, but the problem is the woman he's in love with, we need a name. So his love interest, great. This whole thing is now starting off love, which is a story kind of story element I am not a fan of um, in movies because it's just so generic. But her name is, I'm using one of the apprentice cards. I think I've used her name before, Abigail. So this is another character, NPC, that we may or may not see or interact with, depending on what happens. But that's her name, and that's very important because she will be a major factor in what turns him, what really happens. Because typically in role-playing games, you want to toss the player characters into a situation that drives them to push forward, to challenge them. What I've been thinking about this one is that we're going to start calm, things will start fairly normal, but then there's an axe in the story that will just disperse everything. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I've been trying to think of this past day when I decided to turn this into a campaign. So Reese is he works at a tavern. Let's write that down. So works at a tavern. Remember, this whole video is about Reese. It's not necessarily um, the first episode. What will be happening? That will just we'll decide that in the first episode after this following. But Reese, the tavern he works at is I'm trying to think of a name for the tavern. The Gold's Locket. So the Gold Locket. I was thinking of an old gym in my area called the Gold's Gym, so Gold Locket. And he is a server. He doesn't own it. He's not the boss. He's just a server. So again, our character is a commoner. He's level, not necessarily level 0. He has some skills, but he's more so defined as a commoner. This will be, he's a server and has been, let's say, for a few years. So he has some experience in serving people, helping people, chatting with people. He has a maybe he has a good reputation. Does that affect our reputation bar? Probably not. But if he's interacting with people in his immediate area, I will give him might give him a bonus like advantage or something, like 4d6 and picking the three highest. Actually, in that case, the three lowest because I'm roll on. Deathly Chronicles is a low roll under system. So we have his job, we have his occupation, we have his looks. That's what he looks like. We have his name, his race, his age, his gender, his goal to start a family with his love interest, Abigail. I'm gonna write that down on the notes here. Start family with Abigail. And he comes from a family of hunters. Maybe he decided to not pursue that, but he does it as a hobby. He probably does go hunting for his. Maybe he does live with Let's say he does live with Abigail. They live together. They don't have a kid or anything, but they live together. So I'll write that down here. Let's see, lives with Abigail. They have a, let's see, where do they live in the tavern? Or they live in the back of the tavern, like a connected uh, house, or a separate small house, like on the suburb of whatever the city is. If it's a city, if it's a town. Let's add the Oracle. So I'll get my usual D100. This will be our first Oracle question for today before an actual episode, or before the actual episode one. So 50% chance that it is in a city. Or like what I can do is 1 through 100. The larger the number, the larger the area. 27. So it's a town. He lives in a small, quaint town. Lives in a small town. And the town name is Graymore. Let's see. Origin lives in Graymore. That's his hometown. Kind of connect those two together. So he lives with Abigail in a house, put down house in Graymore. Okay, so it's a small town. He works for the Gold Locket, and he's a servant. That's Reese. I think that's probably enough for Reese. Anything else we need to cover on the game? I'm taking a double check here. That's it. So again, my previous video talks about my entire game, excluding reputation, which is a system or mechanic I added after the uh, posting, after my announcement. So it's in the character creation side. It's not necessarily a mechanic, so it's kind of in the gray area where it's a character creation step, but it's also mechanic. So I might take away the mention of game mechanics. We'll see. I'm still thinking about it, but reputation does kind of it is a big section of the character creation process. In any event. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need, but that's Reese. So to recap, he has a heart of 10, agility of 15, vigor of 6, optics of 13, craft of 13. I decided not to switch anything. That might bite us in the ass later on, especially vigor. But he has a very high move rate. That's like 5 times 8. So his health is 6, and his armor is 1. Maybe he has his armor at home if something happens. Again, I have an idea of what to do, how to start things out, and I will reveal it in the next episode, but it will start in a quiet location. You can probably guess, judging by his picture, but it will start in a quiet situation. So that's it. And I believe that will be it for this episode, episode 0, essentially, of the Deathly Chronicles campaign. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this format. It's going to be a lot of one-on-one with you guys chatting, and I'm going to be theater of the mind. This entire campaign will be theater of the mind. I will update locations behind me, so where the scene will take place will be in the picture behind my big noggin. So, and that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.